Hello and welcome to session 257 in the AISafety.com reading group. Tonight we'll be finishing up Where I Agree and Disagree with Eliezer by Paul Christiano. Hold on. There. Paul Christiano is still a researcher in the Alignment Research Center, and hold on. And this is starting from part 20. Hold on, why is this there? Okay, so we'll start with disagreement number 20 about to what extent words reflect our actual deep thoughts. Paul Eliezer states that human thoughts partially exposes only a partially scrutable outer surface layer. Words only trace our real thoughts. This to me is kind of mysterious in a deep sense. I don't really know, but Paul Christiano isn't pushing back very strongly against the mysteriousness of this point. He's mainly saying that, sure, if we just optimize end-to-end on outcomes, that seems like something that will not relate to human thoughts very much, but we can and just using human thoughts directly is also a bad strategy. But there are a number of strategies in between, like AI safety via debate and a number of others. He even calls it plenty of techniques. I haven't looked very deeply into that area of alignment research, but I think Paul Christiano is being very generous by calling it plenty of techniques. As far as I can see, they are all really undeveloped, and I don't think we should put a great amount of stock in any of those. We have seen large language models apparently being quite useful right now, and it seems very likely to Paul Christiano that this is evidence that similar kind of language-based models will be competitive at the time of transformative AI. My first thought on this is that this is explicitly only on the level of words and not on the level of thoughts that Eliezer is talking about. Eliezer has a different complaint about this. He believes it's hard and probably impossible to just make a powerful system using this kind of simple imitation of human words. Here I will return to one of my key points from last session, where Paul Christiano and Eliezer talks about two different things. When Paul Christiano talks about economically transformative AI, he's thinking about something that can an example would be something that can cure cancer, cure aging, do space colonization, this kind of thing. And what Eliezer is explicitly talking about is capable of creating pivotal acts. And in a very real sense, it may be a lot easier to cure aging than to take over the world. Disjunctiveness, as in having a number of different, mostly independent solutions, is a key part of Eliezer AI doom scenarios, because there are so many different things that can go wrong. Paul Christiano's rejoinder to this is there are also so many ways it can go right, and we only need one alignment strategy to pay off in order for us to basically be safe. I think the way I would try to synthesize these 2 points is to say that we need there to exist an alignment strategy, I call it A, such that for the lethalities L, the alignment strategy A is capable of overcoming the lethality. So there are 2 levels of disjunctiveness. Disjunctiveness in the alignment strategy and disjunctiveness in the lethalities. There is a problem in this, in that we have a long list of lethalities by Eliezer, and this is probably not exhaustive, but if we take an alignment strategy and try to use I don't know, something like eliciting latent knowledge, then that is only one strategy that we are using, and using eliciting latent knowledge probably prevents us from using a number of other strategies. So to some extent at least they are exclusive, so we only get one alignment strategy depending, right? And a number of alignment strategies can coexist, so it's not totally we only have to choose one. Paul Christiano argues that the disjunctiveness in alignment strategies may be more like a greater degree of independence, since we know that there are a number of humans and we don't know that there is in fact how many AIs and how many AIs that are possible. I think like counting the number of humans and counting the number of AIs is the wrong way to look at this. There are reasons to expect that the disjunctiveness in alignment strategies is limited. Right now the number of people who are working on this is low, probably in the low hundreds, and a lot of these people are working on very closely related alignment strategies. A lot of these people are in Berkeley, a lot of these people are rationalists or effective altruists, utilitarianists. There is not that much diversity among alignment researchers. And of course other reasons might be that they are just searching in a part of the solution space where there are no solutions. Maybe there are, and again we can't probably implement all the alignment strategies that we are thinking about. Paul Christiano also have an argument about where this disjunctiveness comes in. I don't think that matters very much when the disjunctiveness happens. Yeah. How alien will an AGI be? The Eliezer point is that it might indeed be very, very alien and not use the same kind of concepts that we do. Paul Christiano, in one of his recurring complaints, is that Eliezer is very, very overconfident in this, and seems Paul Christiano is taking a more, I wouldn't say anthropomorphic, but more human-inspired view of the AI's capabilities. For instance, it might understand the same things as humans, but just slightly better. I think again we are talking past each other in that something that understands the same things as humans but slightly better could be very economically transformative, could obviously like do all menial tasks, but could it do a pivotal act? My strong expectation would be that just being slightly smarter than like an average human is very far from being sufficient to take over the world or solve alignment. Another way that AI could turn out to be human-like would be to be as like a stupid human but just thinking faster, or be extremely human-inspired, because that's where all the training data is basically. I also disagree that these two things are likely to bring us to true superintelligence. Like human imitation won't get us directly to superintelligence. It might be a strong step of the way, but by definition you can't imitate to something greater. So what kind of pivotal acts can weak AGI do? We might see that AI will be doing science, and that might come from similar concepts that, as we do, and in that case we can see that the AI is like creating experiments, formulating hypotheses, and deciding among the hypotheses in a scientific process. But this, while it would be nice to see the AI doing experiments, that doesn't actually tell us very much about what's going on under the hood if we don't understand the actual concepts being used. If we can just see the AI is doing some experiments, but we don't know the concept that they're trying to elucidate, then that won't help us very much, or may not help us at all. And the idea here is that if the AI is fast and cheap, that could be enough for transformative. In particular, I feel that cheap AI is unlikely to do very much, like towards solving the alignment problem or taking over the world. I don't think that that is a very likely scenario. Paul Christiano obviously would disagree with this, and he even makes a very controversial statement that he could see that fast and cheap AI being so much better at alignment research that human contributions are basically obsolete. And Rohin Shah in the comments says that's a pretty high bar, and Paul Christiano say yeah, okay, and retracts that. And this is the kind of really frustrating to look at this from the outside, because this this exchange leaves you feeling like, okay, why there's a lot of implicit understanding here. Why was Paul Christiano able to change his mind just based on like 3 words from Rohin Shah, basically? I don't know. I would really like to know what are the underlying models that Paul Christiano has, that Rohin Shah has, about how this fast, cheap, weak AGI would solve alignment. Because from my point of view, it looks very, very unlikely that you can solve alignment using these kind of techniques. Disagreement 23 is about how we reason about AGIs. This is probably inspired by Eliezer Yudkowsky saying that humans can't participate in coordination schemes between superintelligences, and for one of the reasons Eliezer Yudkowsky gives is that we can't reason about the code of superintelligences. Paul Christiano answers that, well, the superintelligences may not be able to do that either, because they are very likely to be messy. This I would hold out as an example of not Eliezer Yudkowsky being overconfident, but Paul Christiano saying some things that is very likely about the structure of future superintelligences is just really, really hard. We strongly do not know this. Paul Christiano makes another strong claim here, in my opinion, about what will the tools be that the AIs use for reasoning about each other. One is just black box looking at each other's behavior. The second is to use the same kind of tools we use, like the interoperability tools that we have right now, etc. Doing reasoning that is similar to what we do right now, and no other way, basically. Those are the 3 ways that AIs will reason about other AIs when we get to something like superintelligence. I think this is, again, really overconfident, and also I would say that this is at odds with Paul Christiano's hope earlier that AIs would be able to solve the alignment problem. And if AIs are not able to reason about each other in better, stronger ways than we are, then why do we have any particular hope for them solving the alignment problem? And of course, I also strongly feel that this is, like, I still have hope for AI helping us solve the alignment problem, because I do believe that superintelligences are qualitatively smarter than us. But if you don't believe that you will have something like that, then why would that help? Why would they then be able to contribute to solving the alignment problem? The example that Eliezer Yudkowsky gives is by reasoning over probability distributions of each other's code using logical decision theory. This is basically not how we are reasoning about GPT-3 right now. I suppose to some weak extent humans are in fact capable of doing this, but it feels really strongly like something a superintelligence could do much better than us. And I think that's an example of something that goes beyond these 3 examples by Paul Christiano, and that I think, because they seem to be just narrowly out of our grasp, it seems very likely that stronger AI would be able to do this. Another scheme that Eliezer Yudkowsky criticizes is by having some kind of, it's sometimes called multiple Godzillas that are trying to keep each other in check, and that seems like something that will fail in Eliezer-Yudkowsky's model once they become sufficiently capable. This is criticized by Paul Christiano as saying that this is something that will be important in the long run, but not really relevant in the short term. I think there's an easy way to explain this, in that if you have shorter timelines, then the difference between the short term and the long term might be like very, very short time. So that could be a part of it. I wonder also if Paul Christiano is seeing a time where we have AIs that can do pivotal acts but are not super intelligent, because in this case schemes for playing them off against each other could to some extent work, maybe, if they can like solve the alignment problem, but they can't, but they are not super intelligent. Maybe, it's unclear. Another problem with the unworkable schemes that Eliezer-Yudkowsky points out is trying to like have a designer and a design checker and try to incentivize those to work against each other, and then they will obviously be actually incentivized to collaborate against us. This is something that Paul Christiano has low thoughts about. Says this is just an unrealistic incentive-based anti-cooperation scheme proposed by random people. So I obviously would need to went out to try to find some people who did propose this kind of thing, and here is like the research agenda from the Center for Existential Risk, which goes into substantial details about precisely this. So it's not just proposed by random people. I would give 1 to 3 odds that if you went through everything that Paul Christiano himself has ever written, you would find examples of incentive-based anti-cooperation schemes. I think that's I haven't actually gone through everything Paul Christiano has written, but I think he has written so much, and it seems kind of adjacent to a lot of things he has written. So I would expect if you actually went through it, there's a substantial chance he has written about that. But that's I probably shouldn't say that without actually going through that. So the alternative that Paul Christiano is pointing to is selecting for systems that play games competitively instead of trying to get something that just reacts to incentives that are possibly misaligned. There are examples of ways to do this. I think incentive-based methods have a higher probability of working in the limit of very powerful AI, but this is certainly something that you can do instead, and that might in theory work. Eliezer-Yudkowsky is accused of equivoting between 2 statements. First is that AI systems will cooperate, and the second is that the verifiable activities you could use gradient descent to select for won't function appropriately as checks and balances. So it is possible indeed that Eliezer-Yudkowsky is equivocating between these 2, but I did in fact go through the entire document with his list of lethalities, and I can reasonably confidently say that he does not equivocate in this way in this document. So I would like Paul Christiano to come out with an explicit example of where this happens, because I'm not seeing it. Manipulation by superintelligence is something that Eliezer-Yudkowsky believes is likely to happen, depending, or it would be possible at least, and the lethality where this is most prevalent is in his statement that a superintelligence could make a psychological manipulation attack that we could not recognize. This is in Paul Christiano's summary becomes that if it can do pivotal acts, then they can also manipulate humans very well. So there's no point in having debates between superintelligences or try to play adversarial games against them once they are capable of doing pivotal acts. This is somewhat the disagreement doesn't strongly relate to what Eliezer Yudkowsky is actually talking about. And also I feel that if you have an AI that's capable of doing pivotal acts, and if you have like multiple different independent superintelligences that are capable of doing pivotal acts but haven't done pivotal acts, then my timelines are very short. In fact, so short that I don't expect we'll have like multiple superintelligences capable of doing pivotal acts. So imagine a human mind with a profile of abilities. There is you have like Bostrom's 6 cognitive strategic tasks, like research and development being one, and persuasion, social manipulation being another. Which one is harder to get at? To some extent, like all superhuman levels are equally hard in some sense, and so that seems like a reasonable prior that getting to super intelligence along these dimensions is equally hard. I think that this prior is I can see it as a prior, but we also have some evidence. In particular, persuasion is something that it is reasonably easy to get feedback on. Like, I imagine Facebook could run some experiments, some simple A/B testing, and actually get reasonable data about what kind of things persuade people and what does not. You could have an AI in YouTube seeing what drives engagement. I think that is probably things that are already happening. And in contrast, research and development, when Paul Christiano is talking about that, then space colonization or curing aging, that's a kind of research and development, and that's not really what we care about. The research and development we care about is alignment research, and that is pre-paradigmatic, and that seems a lot harder to get good feedback on compared to something like persuasion. So from that point of view, I would expect it to be easier to get superhuman at persuasion than to get superhuman at alignment research. So this is probably dominated by how much effort do we put into this. And if we truly want the AI to be superhuman at alignment research, and we put a lot of resources towards that goal, then maybe we could obtain it. Do we actually in practice have that as our goal? My understanding of where AI resources right now is being spent is that a lot of it is being used on either persuasion or persuasion adjacent work, such as delivering ads. I believe Google does a lot of work on this, or like driving engagement on YouTube and ads on Facebook and things like that. And I believe that there is a lot more actual resources being put towards giving better Google ads than being put towards alignment. And this influences all the arguments. In Paul Christiano's view, we are likely to put more resources towards alignment. And if we do that, then the training is done on alignment, so that will push it towards being better at alignment. If the tools and all the structures are designed to facilitate research and development, and there is a number of AIs that are all collaborating on advancing research and development, whereas manipulation is much more disjoint. And all these arguments, unfortunately, work precisely in reverse when we are instead assuming that more resources are being poured towards manipulation. Like, if the AIs are primarily trained to manipulation, and the tools and structures are designed to facilitate manipulation and ads, and there are many AIs all working on the same kind of goal, and alignment research is the disjoint one. In that case, we should strongly expect to see a superhuman persuasion before we see superhuman alignment research. So what is actually going to be easier? Paul Christiano has a very weak prior that humans are to some extent evolved to be good at persuasion and social manipulation, and not really research and development. That seems like kind of a byproduct of general intelligence. That I think that is very likely. I would point out that there might be a very substantial overlap between alignment and manipulation, and you could argue that some parts of alignment is indeed counter manipulation, and that seems not that out of distribution, possibly, but I'm mostly confused about this, and Paul Christiano also has only a weak intuition about this. The 26th disagreement is about plans. Here in the background you can see the Schlieffen Plan, an example of a real-world plan for Germany's invasion of France and Belgium during the First World War, and notably this was a plan that was insufficient in that the Schlieffen Plan was not possible to carry out. And do we have something like this for alignment? Eliezer Yudkowsky strongly says, no, we have no Schlieffen Plan or anything like this, and what you're seeing right now when you look around is not what surviving worlds look like. Eliezer Yudkowsky's conceptualization of plans is not the same as what Paul Christiano thinks. He thinks that you don't really have this kind of plans in general, and I think that is probably true in the Paul Christiano verse, in his worldview, where a lot of the alignment successes happen by default in some sense. In that case, if alignment happens by default, then plans aren't really that necessary. On the other hand, if you expect that we are in, if not the worst possible world, then a rather tough world where alignment is truly a very difficult problem, then to me, having some kind of plan seems really helpful. Paul Christiano pushes back on whether Eliezer Yudkowsky has a good conceptualization of what actual plans are. And again, I get a feeling that they are talking past each other, in that Paul Christiano is saying that Eliezer Yudkowsky doesn't have a good image of what a plan actually is, but Eliezer Yudkowsky is not saying that the current plan is bad. He's saying that there is no plan, and even if you don't know very much about plans, it is quite possible to recognize just that there is no such plan. I would also, in addition, have liked Paul Christiano to be more concrete, precise, what things are wrong with Eliezer Yudkowsky's conceptualization of a plan, even though he doesn't go into great detail. Why should we defer to Eliezer on what a plan looks like? Well, one obvious reason is that he has explicitly written down a plan for Der Third Land that seems like it could work, not in great detail, but I think that's more than most. I don't think we should really strongly defer, in the sense that if we had a plan that looked like the Schlieffen Plan, then Eliezer Yudkowsky's counter-arguments would be strongly insufficient to criticize this, but we have nothing that remotely looks like a real plan. So how much value does the document AGI Ruin, a list of lethalities, actually provide? Eliezer Yudkowsky somewhat immodestly believes it's very valuable, and that a core alignment researcher should spontaneously write this document. Paul Christiano, not surprisingly, disagrees, like most people, and says this is actually mostly aimed at rhetoric and pedagogy. I disagree. I think that it has a strong rhetorical impact, and it is very it has changed a lot of opinions, but mostly from the fact that the document is extremely blunt, not from the actual contents. And I don't think that Paul Christiano recognizes that the lack of bluntness in previous communication is something that has held people substantially back, and the rhetorical impact may in fact be just a byproduct in some sense. Is this something that will actually be helpful towards solving the alignment problem? That is not what Paul Christiano says, but the upvotes on less wrong seem to be some kind of disagreement, and I also strongly disagree. I feel that the AGI rule list of lethalities is a very, very important document towards solving the alignment problem. I think, as an example, Nick Bostrom's book Superintelligence basically contains almost none of these points, and I think that Nick Bostrom basically should rewrite the book to take these kind of lethalities into account, and I think that they are in fact really, really important considerations. The counter-argument Paul Christiano has is that Eliezer called the ideas he focused on important, but that's not an objective fact about what is important. I think that's a fully general counter-argument. You can just counter anybody's who says this is important by saying it's not an objective fact, it's just your opinion, because obviously everything everybody writes is just their opinion on what is actually important. There are other lethalities, other difficulties, and the contribution, as Paul Christiano sees, of the document of the list of lethalities is just basically collecting up the points. I think this is something that should not be underestimated. I think this is actually really important, almost crucial work to summarize and aggregate existing points. These things have been pointed out many other places. We talked about that last time, but Paul Christiano here goes a bit further and says that there's been argument about more important difficulties in other places, and this is also something that Ivan Hubinger, for instance, has argued in the comments to Eliezer's original post. Eliezer Yudkowsky made a reply to this, saying his list wasn't complete and are there other foreseeable difficulties, and Ivan Hubinger comes up with 5 other difficulties you could see in the future. I won't go through them here, and Eliezer Yudkowsky is of course really sees this as important work, and I strongly agree. Like having an even better version of the list of lethalities is very valuable. When I actually go through Ivan Hubinger's points, a lot of these are impossibility results. Like it is impossible in theory to ensure that an AI is aligned in this particular way. I think it's important and it's a good way, but it's not at all clear to me that these kind of impossibility results are going to be all that relevant. So I think definitely stating that these are more important difficulties is overstating it. Given that this is written by Paul Christiano, he's probably thinking in particular of eliciting latent knowledge. And this has 10 similar difficulties. I went through them, and there is a substantial overlap in difficulty 1 to 7. And they are written in more details, and to what extent they overlap is, I think I disagree a bit with Paul Christiano about that, but he thinks that they are more important because they're more relevant to core problems with realistic alignment strategies. And obviously this is again a matter of subjective taste, in that Paul Christiano kind of naturally feels that his personal best guess for how to solve alignment is the most realistic. Like that's again almost by definition, and like a lot of people are working on things that are not eliciting latent knowledge. And I think some of the difficulties, like the part about regularization, for instance, I think expecting that to be a major component of actual alignment is quite optimistic in my opinion. Eliezer Yudkowsky somewhat weakly states that he would have preferred that the eliciting latent knowledge states all the problems up front together. I think that's whether it's nice to write that or not is somewhat irrelevant. I think as I've said before, Eliezer Yudkowsky hasn't engaged sufficiently with eliciting latent knowledge, and this might be just because he skimmed the report, and I think it's sufficiently valuable that he should read it in detail. So the overall take is that Paul, in general, he obviously had a lot of agreements with Eliezer, and these are good considerations backed up by pretty clear arguments, but they are too confident, and that's something he has said in many places. And a big problem is that Eliezer Yudkowsky's reasoning is more a priori than reasoning about evidence. And the problem with this kind of thing is that we are unlikely to actually resolve the disagreements. Even if there was like 5 more posts back and forth between Eliezer and Paul Christiano, we are unlikely to see any kind of resolution on major questions, or even things they can bet on. And I think that is true, and I think also it is very, very sad that we can't actually use evidence for this. Paul would like Eliezer to write his arguments down in more details. That's one of his core complaints. And my core answer to that, again, as I've said, is that there are in fact links on Arbital where Eliezer Yudkowsky has written this down in a surprising amount of detail. It's also stated that people with Eliezer's views have often made engagement hard. That's of course a bit sad, because I am closer to Eliezer in this regard, and I hope we haven't made it hard on purpose. But I think it's just that engagement is really, really hard, because it is really, really hard to get any kind of meaningful traction on covering these points. And predictions is one thing that would help us, and that we haven't really been able to get going. Paul and Eliezer has failed to converge on any kind of meaningful bets, even though Paul Christiano seems to be strongly more eager and open towards bets. The reply from Eliezer Yudkowsky is basically that his world model is not particularly constrained in what happens until we have some kind of takeoff. He is mostly analyzing what happens once we, to use the rocket analogy, exit the layer of atmospheric turbulence. And that, I feel, is the central meta-lethality in AGI ruin. The fact that we have no strong epistemic way to actually progress on figuring out what is the status of all these claims about AGI ruin. We don't really know how to progress on this. We probably cannot progress on this, and that is the meta-lethality that is ultimately going to doom us. That is all for tonight. Thank you, and see you next week.